What's up? Today we're going to be taking a look at the advice generator that Frontend Mentor just released on their challenge website. We're going to be using React to build this and vanilla CSS as well. We're going to be taking a look at how to use CSS custom properties to build out something like this. We're also going to be using the axios module in order to help us make our HTTP requests. Yes, this can be done with the fetch API, but I find that the axios module just makes it a lot easier making HTTP requests in React. If that sounds awesome to you, stick around and let's get into it. So today we're going to be taking a look at the advice generator app from the Frontend Mentor website. Basically what we're going to be doing is getting an advice from an API. We're going to be hitting an API, getting a string of text, and then just displaying it on this component that we're going to be building. We're going to be doing this in React, and we're going to be using JavaScript to do this as well. So over here, I've just set up a simple React app using create React app. And just to orient you to the folder structure that I'm using here, we have the components folder, and then we also have the CSS folder, which I've embedded a layout file. This is going to serve as the layout for the entire app that we're going to be building. I've done a few resets here, as well as also bringing in the fonts that we're going to be using as well. It's the Manrope font from Google. So yeah, I've done a few resets here, like setting the padding to 0, margin, and then the box sizing to a border box. If you want more information about this, W3 Schools has really good documentation going over why these CSS rules are being applied. We're also using CSS custom properties here. We don't really need to do it since this is a really small application, but it's just something that I like to set up when I'm setting up any project. So we have our primary font here for the font family, and then the font sizes, the font weights, and then all the colors that we're going to be using. I'm going to be taking advantage of a concept known as inheritance. So this means that if I set any of these fonts styles on the base on the top level class, any children of the app class is going to inherit these values unless I specifically state it for that child component. You'll see in a minute as we walk through this. So just going back to this, what we need here is we're going to need this quote card, and then inside the quote card is going to be the advice, and then the actual quote itself with a button which is going to go get a new quote. I've already completed this, and I don't really want to go through the hassle of getting all these assets again. So we're just going to make our own custom button, and when you click that custom button, it's going to serve as you clicking this dice. Yeah, to get started, let's just make a new file here. Let's call it quote.jsx, and we're just going to create a new React component here. I'm using something called React ES7 snippets. I made a video on it earlier, but basically, if I can just find it here, it's this snippet here. It just makes creating components a lot easier when you're working with React. It's the ES7 Plus React Redux React Native snippets. What we want is, let's change this into a section and we can get started. So we want to give this a class of quote. We're also going to be using the BEM naming convention here so that we can just make our lives a lot easier. So going back to the example here, we need three main things. We need a title, we need a piece of text, which is going to be the quotes, and then we also need the button at the bottom here. So let's close this because we're not going to need it anymore. So I'm also going to be using Emmet. Emmet is an HTML plugin that you can download for VS Code. I believe it comes automatically with VS Code when you install the HTML extensions, but it just makes writing, attaching classes to your HTML elements a lot easier. We need three things. We need the title, which is going to serve as the advice header. We need the text, which is going to serve as the actual advice, and then we need the button as well. We're just going to put in placeholders here just for now, and we're going to change it out later. Okay, let's open up our CSS, and then this we don't need anymore. Let's bring in this quote component into our actual app. Components, quotes, and then we can get rid of this placeholder text. And if everything worked correctly, we should be seeing it update in here. We have our quote, and this is just the standard CSS coming in now. So what we have to set a max width just so that when this gets bigger, when this grows, it doesn't exceed a max width pixel value. So we're gonna set it at 1440p, 1440 pixels, and then we're gonna give it a min width as well, so that it can't get smaller than a specific value. Then we're gonna make this display of flex, and then just change the flex direction to column. So you're not gonna see a change. Column, there we go. You're not gonna see a change when we hit save. The only change you do see really is the button now is stretching to fill the available space. That's just because this is now a flex container instead of a block level element. So what we need next is to set the background color of this container. So we're gonna do a background color of, when we have it set in our CSS variables, I believe it's try. And then we're also gonna give the text some color as well so that we can see it. Believe it's primary. We're gonna give it a border radius so that we can round the corners of 10 pixels, and then some padding as well, 1.5 em. I'm gonna set a width of 50% and then align all the text to the center. Text align center. And then give it a width of 50% of its parent. So we want to give a bit of spacing between the title, the text, and the actual button itself. So what we can do here is we can set a gap property and give it a gap of 1em. And just pushes everything a bit away from each other, just giving it a bit of space there, some breathing room. Let's see, what else do we have to do? So here we can notice that the title is the color green, so we have to change that, and then we have to change the font weight on this as well. So if we come over to our quote title, there we go. We can change the color on it of our call. I believe it's secondary. Font weight. It's the second one. And then did I? Yes, I did. And we also have to change the font size as well on that. So font size for font size secondary. Saving it, it will render it like so. Let's style the button. And then we should be good to start the logic for this portion. So we're gonna give it a border of none, padding of 2em, and then 2em top and no 1.25 m, and then 3em. We're also gonna give it a border radius of 10 pixels. And then we are going to give it a font size of, let's do 1.45 rem. Just gonna make it a bit bigger. Then just change this. Then for the title, we have to change it to all caps. So text transform uppercase. There we go. Then we also have to put a cursor. So you can select that, and then you can click the button there as well. Okay, so now it's time, now that the CSS is done, what's left to do is actually code the logic that is going to go into this. So we can change this to advice number, and then it's just going to be an ID. React is going to yell at me right now, but we'll fix that in a second. And then it's going to be quote text. So we're going to destructure it from props, quote ID, and then quote text. just so I'm remembering this correctly. It's going to be, if we type in 23, and then the quote text here is going to be and yeah, that's working. So in order to make HTTP requests, we have to either one use the fetch API that's through JavaScript, or we can use what a module known as axios. We're going to be installing axios and using that because it just makes it a lot easier making HTTP requests. So we can do npm install axios. While this is installing, we can import axios. Perfect, that is done. And then we also have to import a few things from React as well, mainly the use state and then the useEffect. So we can import the use state and then the useEffect from React. So we have to set up a state variable here so that when we actually get the data, we can save that data in state and then display it on the actual component itself. So what we can do is we can say it's going to be a get quote, and then it's going to be set get quotes. It's going to be equal to use state, and we're just going to set it to null for now. And then let's see. We also want to create a function so that anytime we press our button, get new quote, it's going to trigger a function that will activate. But we're going to use the useEffect first so that we can get a quote and then have a quote when the screen loads. So we're going to say useEffect. And since we only want it to run when the actual component mounts, we're going to put an empty array here. So let's say this. It's going to be an axios get request to a specific endpoint. And this, so we could just paste it in here, and then this returns a promise, so we can say get that promise dot res, and then let's see, we could do set get quote and then just set it equal to the response dot data. So in here, what we can do is pass in data dot slip. Then what we can do is do get quote dot advice, and then get quote dot id. If I'm not mistaken, it's this. There we go. So now that's working. Every time we refresh, the API has a cache of 2 seconds, so you have to wait 2 seconds before you can get a new quote. So if we refresh, that is not supposed to happen? Let's just take a look here. Ah. There we go. So the reason that happened is that it could not access the property of ID. That's why I like using TypeScript, because it's really good at catching that. But either way, it could not access the property of null. So this is just optional chaining, meaning that if the property does exist, then you can go ahead and access this property ID here. And so with the advice there as well. We have our quote here. So now what we need to do is get this functionality working. Every time we click the button, we're going to generate a new quote. The easiest way to do this is just to create a function that takes care of that, and then bind it to that actual button as well. But you might be asking, how do we do that? Since the button is in another component, what we can do is we can pass it in as props. Meaning that we can do active, we'll just call it active for now, and then call it as an on-click event is going to be equal to this, and then just call the function here. So what we can do is we can say get we're gonna call the function new quotes. Basically what this function is gonna do is going to do the exact same thing as the useEffect that we have up above. We're also going to be doing async await, meaning that we don't have to do all these then and blah blah blah. So in order to use async await, we have to make this function an asynchronous function. And then what we can do is we can say const res is that we're going to await this response here. So res is going to be the value of res is going to be the same as, it's going to be a promise that is going to be returned from the axios get request that we're sending. But since this is happening asynchronously, we're going to await this response, then we're going to set that response equal to the variable res. So the set that quote is as simple as saying whatever the response is, the data, and then the slip. And then we're going to pass this as props into the quotes. Let me not use active. Let me use active quote. So this is going to be, and we're just going to pass in the reference to this function here. And if everything works, we should be getting a new thing. I don't know why it doesn't work when we are in Firefox. Which is very, very interesting. But if we go into Safari, see every time we click the button, it is going to fire off a new request, and then get the response. Now, as I said, this happens, the API itself, the way it was built, it has a 2-second timeout or 2-second cache, meaning that if you were to send the same request within 2 seconds, you would get the exact same quote. Now that we've finished building out this UI, I implore you to check out other challenges that Frontend Mentor has on their website. It's a really great resource and it gives you a chance to really practice your front-end skills. Now, just as a disclaimer, I just want to say that this video is not sponsored by Frontend Mentor. I think it's just a really good platform in order to practice and learn. With that said, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit a like down below, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.